Oh, merry meet. So, I want to discuss something that annoys me a little bit. And that is every time somebody asks, when somebody says the Satanist, the question is always, oh, are you Levian or Crowleyan? This idea that Crowley was a Satanist. The problem with this idea is that it just shows that they have not bothered to read anything about Aleister Crowley or what he was about. Now, I can probably assume that if Crowley had met Anton LaVey, they probably would have gotten on pretty well, because the LaVeyan idea of Satanism, I think, is something that Crowley could get behind, because it's really a left. It's not about worshipping anything. It's about choosing your own path in life. However, when we look at Crowley, while he did call himself the Beast 666 and such things, the main idea he had was that he was fiercely individualistic, and he advocated a left-hand pathway to spirituality and life in general. Now, left-hand path means it's not evil like a lot of people think. The left-hand path is about being an individual. Basically, the right-hand path is about putting the group first. It's about self-sacrifice. It's about basically living a life after ideals dictated to you by a religion or by society. Basically, the individual lives to serve society. Left-hand path, however, is about you being an individual, and as such, your morals is what you have decided on yourself. And religion, too, is basically based on your own ideals for it. It's not about serving a deity, but basically forming relationships with a deity. And if the sacrifice is involved, it is done because you want to, because you want something. You can say that the left-hand path is selfish, and you would probably be right about that. But that's not the main idea of it. In a way it is. It's basically I don't consider myself to be an extremely selfish person, but that's because I have chosen to be charitable because I want to, not because I believe that there is some ultimate moral idea that I should be. That's basically the essence of the left-hand path. And Crowley was very much a left-hand path practitioner, which you can see in his saying of, do what you will shall be the whole of the law. Of course, it is also followed up by love is the law, love under will, meaning that basically you should do whatever you want, but it should be controlled by some reason, and it has to be controlled by will. You should not act like some sort of wild animal. Anyway, was Crowley anti-Christian? Yeah, he very much was. But I think that has less to do with his spirituality and his magical system, as it has to do with him growing up in an extremely Christian home that he felt as extremely oppressive. And I mean, we can see that in a lot of kids today that has grown up completely stifled by extremely conservative parents, and then when they strike out on their own, they go completely ballistic. For example, we can see that, those in the United States, those states that basically have sexual education, and those states that teaches abstinence only, they start having sex at about the same time. But the ones that have had the idea of abstinence only, have always been told that sex is evil, sex is sin, you should never do sex. They have unprotected sex, they have sex with more partners, and they generally do it a lot more wild and go completely ballistic with it. While those that have been told about sex, they are generally much more responsible about it, because they don't have that extreme idea they have to rebel with something, or that once they now have won their freedom, they have to go completely nuts. They don't have that. And I think that's part of the problem with Crowley, is that he grew up so stifled that a lot of his life was based on rebelling against that. And I think that a lot of the things that he did that at least I consider to be wrong, and things that harmed himself, but he wouldn't have done that if he hadn't grown up in such a stifled way that he felt a constant need to rebel and to shock. But yeah, was he anti-church? Yes. Was he anti-Christian? Not so much. I don't think it was the very idea of Christianity so much as the church. But yes, since the Christian religion is a right-hand path, very much it's about the ideal that you serve God because the Bible says so. You should be humble. You should be... Excuse me, my phone again. I have to remember to put this on silent when I do videos. Anyway, the Christian idea is very much that you should be humble. You should serve God. You should serve your fellow man. And that doesn't sit well with somebody who is a left-hand path practitioner, because then you feel that, no, you should serve yourself. If serving yourself includes then being kind and charitable and nice to those around you, then do that because you want to. And so was he against the church? Yes, but that doesn't make him a Satanist. He would have seen, especially those that think that he served Satan, because serving anyone would be against Crowley's ideals. He saw himself as a king, not as a servant. It wouldn't matter to him if it was the entity he was supposed to give service to was named Jehovah or Lucifer. It wouldn't matter. It would be a service, because while actual real Satanism, LaVeyan Satanism, is left-hand path, the idea that Hollywood very often have of Satanism, the thing that usually pops up in people's mind when they hear the word Satanist, is somebody who serves Satan. That is also right-hand path. It's also based on serving something. And that was very much against Crowley's ideas. If you can say anything, he was an individualist, and he was somebody who had an idea that what should be followed was your own will. That we are all born with an guiding light inside of us, a true will. And that when we get rid of all the nonsense that gets in the way of that and learn to find that true will and follow that true will, that's when we as individuals can reach for greatness. And that was very much his ideal. Now, one ritual within occultism that Crowley very often practiced is called the slaying of a pep. It is basically where you do something that's very, very shocking to your former sensibilities to free yourself of them. And he did this a lot. free himself of his former Christian upbringing, because it's very common when occultists have grown up in a very strict Christian home that they constantly feel guilt about what they are doing, about being magical individuals. And a lot of what Crowley did to spit in the face of that, he did to free himself from those concepts that had been beaten into his head when he was a kid. So, to explain the ritual a little bit better, let's say you have always learned that sex should always be between a man and a woman, and never for anything other than to procreate. Any kind of birth control is sin, and basically you have those. And even if you have now become, let's say, a Wiccan, and you now don't have that religious idea that sex is evil, but it's still that thing in the back of your mind, in the back of your consciousness, that constantly say, no, it should only be with your husband, it should always be with your husband. One way to practice this ritual would be then to go out to a bar, have fun, and have safe but random sex with somebody you meet. Just have a good time, enjoy an evening of pleasure with somebody that you never expect to see again, because that will then be so shocking to your former sensibilities that it is a way to break out of that. And I think that Crowley, in a way, got stuck into that rebellion mode for the rest of his life. But that doesn't make him a Satanist. I think that a lot of people, they have these ideas of Crowley that doesn't really match with reality. And they should really read a little bit up about him before they begin to say such things. Not that I really think that Crowley would mind if somebody called him a Satanist. They would probably think it's great fun. But it can be a bit bothersome for people that are practicing Crowley's system. Now, for me, I don't care. Since I have never been Christian, didn't grow up in a Christian home, if somebody should call me Satanist because I study Crowley's systems, it has no meaning to me, because for me, that has never been the big bad guy. It's just been no. I might as well say, oh, you must be TV repairman. No. It doesn't really matter to me, but for a lot of people, being called a Satanist is a problem, and then it gets somewhat of an issue when they are Thelemites and practicing Crowley's system and hear that constantly. But there's so much misconceptions about Crowley. So, yeah. Did he do a lot of things that weren't exactly good? Yeah, he did. He was definitely selfish. And like I said, I think that had Crowley, with his brilliance, been born into a family that didn't stifle him quite so much, I think that you would have gotten a saner man out of it. Because it's clear that, and especially at the end, he was pretty addled by drug abuse, and some of the magic he worked with was pretty damn dark. But that doesn't make him a Satanist. He was a left-hand path practitioner who very much rebelled against any establishment. But he didn't worship Satan, he didn't worship anything to that degree. He had gods and spirits that he cooperated with, and some of these he acknowledged as so powerful he had to give them a special respect. But he didn't have that servant relationship with any of these gods, because that would go against his ideas when it came to the left-hand path. So, yeah, I think that reading about Crowley could be a good idea, because he's an interesting man. And yeah, by Crowley evil, I don't really subscribe to an idea of good or evil as this thing that, oh, you're either good or evil. He definitely did things that I find morally wrong, and he did a lot of things that I find morally right. So I assume that he, like any human being, were a bit of both. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that topic. I hope you have a great day, and blessed be.